This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey. Here are your top stories. Russia describes the explosions at an ammunitions depot in annexed Crimea as an act of sabotage without naming the perpetrators. In the US, Republican Liz Cheney loses the Wyoming primary to a rival endorsed by Donald Trump. And 1 year after the Taliban retook Kabul, a close aide of the former president tells our international correspondent why his government decided to flee Afghanistan.
Russia is calling it sabotage. Ukraine is admitting nothing. Either way, the explosions, this time at an ammunition depot in Russia-annexed Crimea, is unsettling Moscow and locals. Tuesday's blasts appear to be a second suspected Ukrainian attack on the peninsula in just over a week. Ukraine's President Zelensky, in his nightly address, warned people in the area to be careful.
The cue to leave Crimea for Russia through the Kerchensky Bridge in recent days proves that the absolute majority of citizens from the terrorist state are beginning to comprehend, or at least feel, that Crimea is no place for them.
The blasts forced the evacuation of more than 3,000 people who lived nearby.
There was shooting, there were explosions, shells falling right into backyards. We had a shell in our backyard. The guys came over to inspect it. We left everything, left it all as it was and took off.
We came out to take a look and saw clouds of smoke coming out of the cowshed where the military warehouses are. We stayed there until about 7, 8 a.m. Then there were explosions, flashes, debris falling on us.
On Thursday, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and President Zelensky are to meet in Ukraine to discuss last month's UN-Turkey brokered grain deal and the attacks on the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in southeastern Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine have blamed each other for the shelling near the nuclear plant, which Russian forces control. The UN wants its nuclear inspectors to be given access to avert a possible disaster.
US Congresswoman Liz Cheney has lost her Wyoming Republican primary by a landslide to a rival endorsed by Donald Trump. Cheney is a longtime critic of the former president and is leading the investigation into the January 6th riot. The pro-democracy Lincoln Project said the primary result marks the end of the Republican Party. Conceding defeat, Cheney said she will continue to oppose Trump after she leaves office.
We must be very clear-eyed about the threat we face and about what is required to defeat it. I have said since January 6th that I will do whatever it takes to ensure Donald Trump is never again anywhere near the Oval Office, and I mean it.
Cheney's opponent, Harriet Hageman, ran on her allegiance to Trump and the claim that the 2020 presidential election results were rigged.
Wyoming has spoken on behalf of everyone all across this great country who believes in the American dream, who believes in liberty, and who recognizes that our natural rights, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, equal protection, and due process come from God. They do not come from government. And the government cannot take them away.
8 House Republicans that voted to impeach Trump last year have since left office. The result comes days after the FBI recovered numerous classified documents at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate.
Five years ago, Spain was rocked by multiple terrorist attacks on Barcelona's Las Ramblas and nearby Cambrils, in which 16 people died and about 100 were injured. On Wednesday, people flooded to the memorial in Las Ramblas to lay flowers commemorating the victims of this abhorrent attack. Barcelona's Mayor Ada Colau is one of them, comforting relatives of those who died, like this Australian woman who lost her 7-year-old son in the attack. On the 17th of August 2017, these streets were packed with tourists, but at around 5 p.m, a van drove into passers-by, killing and wounding many of them. Hours later, 5 Islamist fundamentalists from the same terrorist cell ran over 4 people in Cambrils before a deadly shootout with police. Inflation has risen to a 40-year high in the United Kingdom, with the consumer price index surging to 10.1% last month. But the Bank of England warns there's worse to come, predicting a peak of just over 13% this year. This will add to the UK's cost of living crisis as the threat of recession looms while the country awaits a new Prime Minister.
German filmmaker Wolfgang Petersen has died after developing pancreatic cancer. The 6-time Oscar-nominated writer-director was critically acclaimed for his World War II submarine epic Das Boot. It propelled him into a blockbuster Hollywood career that saw him working with top stars in films that included In the Line of Fire and Air Force One. He was 81 years old.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has expressed disgust after Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas accused Israel of committing 50 Holocausts against Palestine. Speaking at a joint press conference in Berlin, Abbas skirted an apology for the deadly attack by Palestinian militants in Germany 50 years ago.
50 massacres, 50 Holocausts. And until now, every day there are deaths by the hands of the Israeli army. Our demand is that we say enough. Let's work for peace, security and stability.
In a tweet, Germany's leader condemned the remarks, describing any comparisons to the Holocaust as intolerable and unacceptable. Israel's Prime Minister Yair Lapid also reacted angrily, slamming Abbas's comments as a monstrous lie. Meanwhile, EU Commission Vice President Margaritis Schinas warned that such comments can feed anti-Semitism. This comes just weeks before the 50th anniversary of the Munich attack, in which Palestinian militants killed 11 members of the Israeli Olympic team.
A gruelling press conference for Australia's former leader Scott Morrison, as he defends secretly appointing himself to 5 ministries while in power during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Did the Prime Minister take any additional payment for any of these things? Of course not.
Did the Prime Minister deceive his colleagues? Yes. And the public.
The Prime Minister
and the voters.
Morrison has resisted calls to resign for swearing himself into key portfolios, including Defence and Treasury. He maintains it was in the nation's interest for him to have the additional power at the time.
They were put in there as a safeguard, as a break glass in case of emergency. And as a result, thankfully, we didn't need to break the glass, and as a result, I didn't need to trouble any of those ministers.
Morrison's Conservative coalition lost power in May, ending nearly a decade of centre-right rule in the country. As leader, he was routinely criticised for a lack of transparency, which burst onto the global stage when French President Emmanuel Macron accused him of lying over an abandoned submarine deal. Australia's new Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has asked the Solicitor General to advise on whether his predecessor acted legally with the secret appointments.
The first rule of Power Grab Club is don't talk about Power Grab Club. And Scott Morrison broke that rule today. Scott Morrison was evasive, he was defensive, he was passive-aggressive, and of course he was self-serving.
All the best. Thank you.
It is not yet clear whether Morrison will face any political or legal fallout from the revelations.